that time I had surgery before. In 2018, December 2018, I'd had surgery for my meniscus, for my knees. And the role of the crutches, so after I had my surgery and I was healed and everything, I gave my crutches to my aunt, you know, and yeah, basically she was using my crutches. From that point going forward, I was healed, I was walking as normal. There obviously were still some pains, lingering pains. Those of you that have had knee surgery or any sort of like infrastructure type surgery, you know that the ailment almost never goes away completely. So, I mean, I always had little niggles here and there, but it was never anything major, you know. But I remember very well on that day, something said to me, go get crutches, you know. I had this scam and I looked for golden ones because at least now I could enjoy my injuries. And I had, you know, I jokingly said to myself that, hey, should anything happen again, I think I thought more was gonna fall. That's what I thought was gonna happen. So I thought, should anything happen to me or should anything happen again, at least now I can have crutches. I can have nice golden crutches for me to basically use during the period of my illness or during the period of my recovery, what have you. And yeah, so I got these golden crutches. They were bronze more than gold, but they were shiny and I loved that, or copper, you know. And I put them in the boot of my car and carried on working at work. Nothing major. Knocked off, went home, worked a bit, and then slept. Midnight. I don't know if it's when the clock struck 12 or what, because I was asleep, you know. But I remember very well, because I had to call my doctor, I called my dad, that sort of thing. So I know that it was midnight, and I mean, I was very worried about the fact that I'm waking up everybody else and can't just wait till the morning, that sort of thing. At midnight of that day, out of nowhere, my knee just, it was almost as if someone had stabbed me in the knee. It felt like I was gonna die, like the pain went from my knee to my heart. And I could feel like that link was very, very active. It was painful, the most painful thing I had ever felt, you know. Prior to that, when I had knee surgery, it was because I had a knee that was not optimally functioning. Not because I had had a horrible encounter with it and I felt as if I'm gonna die or anything. But that day, I remember, it was as if my heart was beating in my knee. That's how painful it was. You know, I could feel, is it the artery that pumps blood to all your body parts? I could feel the artery in that section. It was very, very active, very alive. Oh, and now as I speak, wow, like I just got a pain on the side. Hey, all of this is, please pardon me if it is all woo-woo, you know. I think it's a bit coincidental, but also those of you that I give them might tell me that, hey, chief, wara wara, you know. So yeah, that pain, and you know, eventually my doctor advised that, look, I mean, my dad advised that if you've taken, I think by that time I'd taken 4 gen pains, and I was worried that if I go up to 6 and 10, I would be overdosing. And so my dad said, hey, you know what, in the morning, if it still hasn't gone away, go to the emergency room, or not even in the morning completely, but go to the emergency room. So I called my brother, cousin then, Tokyo, let him know that, hey, my man, I'm in so much pain, what have you, it's impossible. Come through to come get me and then take me to the doctor so that I can have my surgery. Long story short, I got admitted, did have the surgery, gave me a further diagnosis of my meniscus repair, second arthroscopy, and I was booked off work for the month. And first of all, the month itself, I took it as a blessing in disguise, because I don't know, there's no way I was gonna survive work. It He was a troublesome client, and there was no way around it, you know. Again, that's not the point of the recording. There was a lot that was happening, and some of the interpretations I got was that essentially I was being protected from that, you know. So but I remember during my physio, during my recovery, because that's when I went to get my tattoos, I remember there was a day where I felt as if my grandparents were with me, my late grandfathers, they were with me. And I had the deep, deep, deep desire to find their pictures, first and foremost, as far back as I can find them, and essentially do a sleeve or half sleeve with their faces, you know. And I remember debating with myself, I'm not a tattoo guy, I'm a clean guy, I don't, you know, whatever you associate people that do those sort of things with. I basically, I judged in that situation, and I was like, nah, I'm not that guy, you know. And so I didn't do it, you know. That day, I didn't do their faces, you know. But I remember very clean and clear that, listen, since you cannot do their faces, do a representation of their faces. And I remember the correct or the appropriate representation at that time of their faces was my totems, you know. So that was the first two tattoos that I have on my arm. So if you check, I've got on the inside I've got a monkey, and on the outside I've got a tiger / leopard, ingwegazi, coming from those totems, my forefathers, you know. And then I've got a black swan here that has to do with, you can call it my life philosophy or my life orientation, you know. The concept, I got it from Nassim Taleb, but it permeates throughout life. The fact that your life is going to turn on random events, random to you obviously, that have a significant impact, undeniable significant impact. In fact, the impact is so significant, it surpasses anything that came before that moment. So that's a black swan event, you know. So to always remind myself that whenever black swan events occur, either take advantage of them or live your life in such a manner that when a black swan event occurs, it can propel your plans, it can propel your dreams much, much further than you ever would have thought they would. And then the final one is on my forearm. It's a vein, it's a blue vein. It's the only color that I have with my tattoos, except the eyes of the ingwegazi. But that was just to show its eyes. So it's the blue vein. And you know, those of you that know, when we speak of royalty, we speak of blue blood or purple blood sometimes. You know, with navy blue or real dark blue, royal blue, representing royalty. And that's basically, it's almost as if it's a decree to myself to always never forget that not only are you well guided, but you're royally guided. And I've never really spoken to anybody about my tattoos. Obviously people have asked, and I never go that deep or that detail. But even now, I mean, I'm not going into that much detail for the sake of the tattoos themselves, but it's the sake of the storytelling of what then happens around there. I can tell you now, the easiest way to put it is to say something was born at that time. And over the next 4 to 5 years now, in 2026, I proceeded to have a deep, higher hunger and deep desire to explore more, to know my ancestors more, to know my lineage more, to know myself more, to know where am I coming from, where am I going, who am I, what are the plans that I have for the family, for the legacy. For those of you that know, on my mom's side, I'm one of the eldest boys, the first grandson in a long lineage of granddaughters. And I've always had this sense of direction and legacy and guiding and guidance that says you must trail the path, you must open new paths, you must set a direction for your siblings, for your parents for that matter. First born ekhaya between my mom and dad, and so I've always had a very deep sense of generational plans, and so I've been investigating that for years and years and years. And then 3 years back or 2 years back, 2024, I had this deep urge. I think it was after a long conversation that our family was having, I think after my mom's 50th birthday, when we were at the B&B, and I was sitting there with my aunts, with my dad. This is now on the dad side of the family, and we're discussing a lot of things. My cousins were sitting around, and it was recorded. It was an intentional effort to basically bridge a generational gap. It was a seminal moment in the family where we seldom had the opportunity to be together in a room. I know my dad grew up together. They grew up in each other's houses. They brag about that. It's a sense of pride, rightfully so, for how they've been able to grow together, And so for us as cousins and further siblings, it was basically essentially the first time that we were having the opportunity to have generational conversations, generational talks in such a setting. And I remember a constant theme that would stand out in that conversation, and we linked everything: colonialism, apartheid. We wanted to get to the root of the poverty, not only in the family but in black society, more especially in the family though, because we have a family goal and desire and plan and almost calling that my dad received to eradicate poverty in his lifetime in the family. So as an extension of that, I wanted to understand what would be the root cause of the family. And I think I've done a video before. I've spoken a lot about the amount of land that was taken from us, stolen from us during apartheid as the family. So I wanted to understand what happened in the lifetime Kagogo that so badly dispossessed us, but also why were we so far away then from bringing that back, and what were some of the obstacles that we had to navigate and overcome. And I remember a constant theme and a constant retort was the Bible has all the answers, God has all the answers, but we've never read the Bible. I went to a Christian school. I had read the Bible, but it was not a purposeful Bible reading to fully know and understand the story of the Bible. It was mainly just, I guess, to read the Bible because we're reading the Bible. This is what you do if you're a good Christian. And I remember many of the arguments. Once we had exhausted the family knowledge and we had exhausted the South African history, they would always default to, but the Bible has the final answer or the final say. But namanglazi ukuthi lithini iBhayibheli, And I think we resolved eventually to say, you know what, maybe we must go read the Bible. And I say I think because I don't remember walking away with each of us having an assignment or homework to go read the Bible. But I remember the very following year, so this was September. And those of you that are Zulu, you'd know Mandulo. It's the year. It's the New Year, the Zulu New Year. Not even the Zulu. It's the African New Year. It's the Southern Hemisphere New Year, to be honest with you, because that's spring. I mean, it's January now. January is spring in the Northern Hemisphere, so it's not a Zulu thing. I don't like when we culturalize facts and events, So it's also very prophetic or spiritually significant that it was around September that conversation was happening. But I remember when January 2024 came by, I knew and I had resolved immediately that I'm going to read the Bible. I'm never going to be in a conversation or discussion in which biblical knowledge is required or is a necessity, and my default or my go-to is that anglazi Bible. I've never read the Bible, but I know the answer is in the Bible. Like, I had a deep sense of what are we running from as the youth, what are we running from as a family, what are we running from as a country, if we know the answers are in the Bible but we're not reading the Bible. And so I downloaded a Bible reading app, and it's called the Bible in a Year app. And essentially there, what I was going to do is read the Bible for the coming year, you know. And I remember downloading the app and starting, and it starts obviously on Genesis 1 verse 1, but it's a pastor, it's a Catholic pastor, and he explains that the way they read the Bible as pastors, it's a theological reading of the Bible. So it's not Genesis to Revelation in one sitting as you and I, the amateur, would do, but essentially it's it's the story broken up into history, the prophets, and then obviously the Gospels, with the view being you're trying to not just have a straightforward reading of the Bible, but a more sense or theological reading of the Bible. And you'll see a lot, even with your pastors when they preach, they tend to not just read one verse after the other. So they'll pick a verse in Matthew, maybe Luke, and then go to the Old Testament, and then go to the end, the Revelations and the sort, because the Bible is written in the way that it is God inspired, and you kind of have to be guided when coming to interpreting and reading the Bible, you know. And essentially that's why I followed the Bible reading app, and I was guided by a Catholic pastor in doing so. And so that was the story with how I began my spiritual and Bible reading journey. It's gonna come to today, and probably the theme or the heading of this video. And so for a year, all I was doing is every single morning without fail, I would wake up, it would be a 20-minute podcast. They would say the scripture that they're reading from, the book that they're reading from. They introduced me, in fact, even to the current Bible that I read, the Great Adventure Bible, the Catholic Bible. It's a guiding type Bible. It follows that Bible in a Year plan that they have. And so even now, if I want to read the Bible in a year again, I just follow that thematic type reading and get through it. So 2024 was pretty much about just putting the word into the head, you know. I would say nothing beyond that. It was almost like an academic reading of the word and just dumping it in the head. And then when 2025 came, it was now you've got this habit of reading the Bible daily, but you've completed it. Are you gonna do it again? And the answer was no, largely because even at that point it had just been academic. Some key takeaways that I'd gotten from that was sort of a structure of how life is structured and how history perfectly can be retold. So the current retelling of history, for example, if someone says this is the history of World War I, we tend to just record the events themselves and tell it as if it is a book that you're reading, versus the Bible has all 5 elements. So it's the event that happened, it's a spiritual telling of the book, it's a prophetic telling of the book in some instances, what's going to come in future, what's the significance with other events that have happened before. There's an economic telling of history. So what was the situation around the time? So maybe they will say there was a great famine, there was a great drought, maybe they will say there was it was a season of plenty. So it's also got that economic slash abundance thermometer, so to speak. And then there's a war or political contextualization as well. So they will say that during that time, it would be around the time, the era of King David, or the era of King Solomon, or the era of Nebuchadnezzar, the era of the Egyptian era. So it's also telling you something about the political dispensation. So you almost, by reading the Bible, get this holistic appreciation of this story or this history that is happening, this thing that is happening. I don't even know what to call it, That was one of the biggest takeaways that I had. There's also the linguicism, the lyricism, you know, the Greek, the Latin, the Hebrew that is infused in there, the Arabic and the Aramaic. It all comes through, you know, especially if you've got a good Bible that expands on some of those themes and some of those areas, essentially to let you know that this is why this gets interpreted like that, or this is how this gets interpreted. So it was a very rich year in terms of my understanding of what was happening, the Bible, the story, what is what and who is who and when is when, whenever now somebody talks about something. So 2025, I then resolved that, you know what, let me attend church, actually, because I now no longer have this day-to-day reading of the Bible, but I still want this systemic engagement with the Bible. Now let me put meat to it, let me put meaning to it, let me now let it have significance, let it now have shape, let it now what do you call it, color in life. Now let me go to church and hear a sermon and a semantic reading of the Bible. Now let me go and hear for today's message, what is pastor saying and what are the verses that he brings in. And when I go home and read those verses, already I have a knowledge of where they are in the Bible and what they mean, and I have that academic richness in me now. But now let me go and obtain essentially the what do you call it, the sermonic, I call it the sermonic, or the gospel, maybe someone would say, but the pastoral contextualization of things, so that I can get to understand why is it that when a pastor is preaching about 1, 2, 3, why are these the verses that he goes to, you know. And I learned there even some things from that, you know, maybe how we are learning from the life of David, we're learning from the life of Joseph, we're learning from the life of Abraham, we're learning prophecy, we're learning posture, we're learning timing, seasons, that sort of thing. And I then got a new appreciation for the preaching of the word itself as it exists in its format. And the more I did this, the more I started to have now the transcendental part and aspects to spirituality, you know. Not yet revelation, but now, you know, something would happen when certain scriptures would be said or spoken to me, because now they've got context in terms of where they are in the Bible and what was happening then, but they've even got meaning in terms of somebody who's a man of God has already spoken them to me. And I don't just limit it to God in the Christian sense itself. You'll remember that I started the story with an ancestral resonation to my forefathers. So I was even getting to understand the African expression of spirituality. So why is it that in my people, or Emakaya, it's not the Bible, but it's the practices that we have around, I'll tell you what I call it later on, around what it is that we are doing, you know, this spirituality thing, this walk with spirit. So I was getting very well guided. There's a channel, Kamkulundrondro, that you can have a look at. It eludes me now what it's called. Oh, and Umkulu is gonna shout at me for this, because the decoloniality project, actually, and he speaks about the spirit of colonialism, where it came from, why we experienced it in the way that we do, and he shows how dark and light spirits are at war and why we are doing what we're doing. In fact, do you see how prophetic it is that more than the Bible showing me that and teaching me that, despite the fact that obviously pastors speak of that, I'm going to show you guys some of the abundance that I'm driving through and driving by. It's simply beautiful. It's simply beautiful, you know. Yeah, and so essentially he touches on those, you know, and he gives you I'm glad that it's happening from an African context. It was African spiritual guidance or spiritual lens that was showing me these things. And I remember he answered a key thing that I had once I had this perfect understanding, and I was trying to balance these two worlds, so to speak. You know, one day I asked him, what is spirituality? Or he asked, or I asked him. So I have him on WhatsApp, and he also has this storytelling method, or this teaching method of teaching in a way that he asks the question that the everyday person would ask. And I remember one day he said, remember, the definition of spirituality is oneness with God. Oh, I nearly fell off my chair. Even now when I think of it every time, oh, it hits me. Oneness with God. And every time I would read the Bible, every time I would engage this into and the African expression of spirituality, I would always be looking for that oneness with God, that understanding of the thing that is happening here is that there is a oneness with God that is happening. So much so that eventually I asked, if it is oneness with God, why do we then call it African spirituality and Western spirituality? And the Bible came to Africa through obviously the barrel of the gun, that sort of thing. And I learned that there is also culture. So remember how I told you how the Bible being read in the way that it is written, it infused history, it infused seasons, it infused so many more elements that are not there in the dry telling of history that we do when we talk about the history of World War I and the history of World War II and that sort of thing. And so I got to appreciate that there's culture that also is infused in our imperfect practices or seeking or desire to be one with God, you know. And so obviously when I love these houses, whenever I pass here, I always say to myself and pray to God that you understand the plans that I have in my heart for a farm style type of living, you know. And so I asked, why then do we say African spirituality? What are we talking about when we talk about African spirituality? You know? And he said there's no such thing. In fact, even Africans themselves, in their desire to be Pan-African, in their desire to have and own their own narrative and their own their own story, essentially they're short-sighted and they're ill-informed when they speak about African spirituality, because there's no such thing. You can maybe say an African expression of spirituality, because in all our desire to be one with God, what in essence we are then doing is we are using the ways that are known to us and passed down to us and taught to us to then express or try and achieve that oneness with God, you know, that return to God. And in the Christian sense, we then would call it presence with God, but it's not Christian, it's actually English, but it's factually what oneness with God, it's presence with God. And that is where now when you read the story of David, one of the things that he, after he had realized what he had done, how he had sinned with Rachel, slept with another man's wife, the first thing that he said as a king, out of everything that he prayed for, the first thing that he prayed for was, please do not take your spirit from me, do not remove me from your presence. So take everything. David is one of the greatest kings to have ever lived. I don't know, I'm not yet there in my education between him and Solomon, you know, but it's him because he never fell into the depths of losing it all that Solomon fell into, you know. He basically said, don't take away your presence from me, take everything, God, you know, but do not remove me from your presence. And essentially also do not remove your spirit from me. I mean, I think after that event, he then proceeded to go and look for the Ark of God and or the Ark of the Covenant. And you guys can read up on those things. It's not about that. I'm still coming to where I'm coming to. And that entire journey, you know, my eyes have continued to be opened this year, and I've read then devotionals, and I've read one of the greatest books that I'm currently reading is this book called Teaching on the Order of Melchizedek. And I'll show you the book, and I've shown you guys before, the Order of Melchizedek. And it essentially brings it all together. Why it is we practice Isintu, why it is that then Christ came, and why he did what he did in the way that he did, the prophecies that he was fulfilling, as well as why the Jews rejected him, and why sacrifice and those sort of things are so common in the Bible, in our expressions of spirituality, you know, our desire to be one with God, and why actually it's common everywhere. And the concept of the law versus faith, which is what it all culminates into. And again, we can talk a lot about that, but I just wanted to give you a strong background of how far back this journey has been, or how far back it has gone. I mean, 2026 now marks 3 years. Basically, at the end of this year, in the earthly sense, I qualify for a bachelor's degree in theology, or in walking and seeking God, you know, which is one of the big paths and big revelations that then started. So now by this time, revelation started coming, and I learned of this concept of seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything shall be added unto you. And that was Jesus saying that. He was not speaking about Christianity, he was not speaking about Judaism, he was not speaking about Isintu, he was not speaking about any particular religion. He was not concerned at all with religion. He was now concerned about what we, anyway, all of us in our ways have been thinking we are doing. And he comes very prophetically in Matthew 6, I think it's verse 21 to 33, and he speaks about why is it that you look for food, you look for shelter, you look for you worry about your clothes, what you will wear. And he says, what more the birds, the animals, the grass, that God wakes up and he so faithfully dresses and adorns with beauty and splendor. What more you, man? And this is where it becomes relevant to this channel. For those of you that up to now have been thinking, yo, chairman has gone spiritual on us. From a finance perspective, that is where for me it always linked and came in. Remember, we are pursuing finance so that I can help you guys become wealthy, financially independent, meet all your obligations as they come along. And it would be wrong of me, as I keep growing, to not mention that one of the intersections, one of the very strong parts that I have come across that then answer the finance question here on earth was that verse, that chapter where Jesus said, why do you worry about all of these things? And he gives a clear instruction: seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be given to you. He says your Father in heaven knows you need clothes. He knows you need fashion. He knows you need umswenko. He knows you need a beverage. He knows all of these things. He knows you need them. And uzoknika, it says that in the Bible, and he will give them to you. But you must seek his kingdom. You must seek his righteousness. And I can tell you now without a shadow of a doubt, no matter which religion you come from, no matter how you define the expression of spirituality, wherever you are in the world, there is clean and clear an element of we are looking to get into God's presence. We are looking to get closer to God. And all these earthly things will be given to you. Mina ngakutshela ngesintu, clean and clear. Every spiritual healer that I've engaged with or spoken to and engaged and tried to understand some of these big questions, all of them have made it clean and clear that, listen, Money is the smallest, the least that you can worry about. Funumkulu, hear what they have to say, hear the messages that they have to pass down to you. But with Umkulundlondlo, I understood that that entire journey is your guidance to walk. It's your return to God. Ngesintu, that is. With Christianity, there's another path. With Judaism, with Islam, there's another path to it. But all of us are seeking to essentially return to God. So I now come to the topic or the subject of today's recording, which is the orphan spirit or the fathers, the lack of fathers in our society. And you guys would have seen, I would have touched on the concept before of family being one of the biggest financial instruments that you can ever use. The benefits it has, the focus it gives you as a man, its providence, the responsibility it gives you. You know, I've been saying to my siblings that, you know, when ambition competes with responsibility, responsibility is gonna win. You guys have followed my marriage journey. You guys have followed some of the things that I've been coming into or coming to understand. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt now that if you and I go one-to-one and your only motivation is the fact that you're trying to buy a Porsche and be a millionaire, I'm gonna win. Because I'm trying to feed my wife, I'm trying to feed my family, I'm trying to make sure that my brothers are all right, I'm trying to make sure that the next generations that come after us are set. I'm trying to feed my community, people that are fellow accountants with me, people that are fellow, I've got engineers, software engineers that work for me. I've got it all in my team, my lawyers, you name it. I'm gonna win because it's not ambition, it's responsibility. And I can tell you now this is revelation. There's a biblical principle, or there's a concept that says God will meet you at your point of need. Providence meets you at your point of need. That is why when you get married, when you have kids, you generally tend to pray because you are seeking divine assistance to meet your responsibilities, and almost without a shadow of a doubt, it gets met. I've got so many testimonies about the number of times I've never had money and my wife comes and she wants the silliest things on earth to me. And for some reason, a client will walk through the door, an opportunity will come through, and I can meet that opportunity. That is providence meeting me at a point of need. And it is need because it has got to do with more than me. The scripture, James 4 verse, I think 1 to 10 or up to verse 10 comes to mind, where I forgot who wrote James. I think it's Paul, I don't know, Peter. And he says, why is it that you ask but you do not receive? You ask but it is not given to you. And he says, you wicked of the world, it's because you ask to feed your pleasures. Going back to that Matthew verse that says that when you just want food, shelter, clothes, whatnot, for their sake, and we guide you, advise you, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be given to you. And it continues that verse, it says, it is because you ask for your own passions, to spend on your own passions. And it almost, the implication is, if you then ask for the benefit of others, we now go to the spiritual gifts, those that know about the spiritual gifts. The common thing that is repeated there is that they're not given for you. You are not given tongues so that you can lord over us when you are more spiritually gifted than we are. It is very clean and clear in Corinthians, in Philippians, and the other parts. I don't know the Bible that well still, but I know that at least that information, that they are given for the edification of the body of Christ, for the edification of the church. They are given for the common good, as it says in the Bible. They are given for all of us, you know. And so eventually what I come to, and as I say, when I come to today's session, it was coming face to face now with this orphan spirit and learning of it from this book, The Order of Melchizedek, and finding out that the last book of the Old Testament is Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. And I'm gonna read it. It reads as follows. It says, "Look, I am sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives. His preaching will turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse." That's apparently what the last verse of the Bible says. And I say apparently because I must still go look for it myself. That was the last book of the Old Testament. And they say for 400 years, they call it the 400 years of silence. They say God then just do. And that is why those of you that are Christians and know very well about the Mount, the Great Transfiguration, I think, when Moses and Elijah met Jesus on the mountain, and the glory of God then was manifest in him, and for the first time, I think Peter, James, and John, or maybe Luke, but I think it's John, got to see for the first time Jesus's complete divinity, where the law of Moses was then fulfilled, and the promise of Elijah had then been fulfilled as well. And now the greatness of Jesus. Obviously, I might be paraphrasing, guys. Whatnot. Please bear with me. Finally culminated in Jesus. So for this 400 years, God had said, before the Lord arrives, I'm first going to send Elijah. And the major thing that Elijah is going to bring to you is he will turn the hearts of fathers. Some Bible says turn the hearts of parents to their children, and the hearts of children to their parents, or the hearts of children to their fathers. And then 400 years of silence before then the New Testament comes. The reason I say that is because into esikalangazo in society today, it's the thing that I've cried about before. The absence of fathers in the family. From a spiritual perspective, that already started in Genesis. When the serpent cast doubt in Eve's head, gave her the fruit to eat, Adam, understanding that this is the woman, that this is the person that God had given to him, and he has to be loyal to her and be there for her and side with her, joined her and also ate the fruit. And from then onwards, they were cast from the presence of God. They were cast from the Garden of Eden. And thus was born man's eternal search for return to God, to return to the presence of God. That's what the Garden of Eden spiritually signifies. The presence of God. You know? And so the Old Testament, until I've proven it, but I'll take it on the word so far, it ends on that note where God says, the main thing that you guys have to be taught to prepare yourselves, and I'm gonna give you 400 years of that, to prepare yourself for my coming, is I'm going to send the teaching of your hearts turning towards fatherhood, and your fathers' hearts turning to their children, so that the day Jesus prays the prayer, Our Father, and the Jews are shocked, surprised, almost feel as if he's blaspheming. How dare you call God your Father? 400 years of preparation has been happening. 400 years for the foreshadowing, the forecoming had been happening. And so today when we cry that the biggest issue we have in society is this and that and this and that, all of the ills that we have in society, as we always say with my friends, they can be traced to the breakdown in the family. We then say the fatherlessness pandemic. Now we see in the Bible the level that it holds, the stature that it holds. God knew this. And the last thing that he put in the Old Testament was to say, I'm now going to return fathers' hearts to their children and children's hearts to their fathers. I always say God's CPC, God's PTYLTD is family. The institution that he loves to act through is the institution of family. And that's why, from a financial perspective, I've said to you guys before that, listen, men, do yourself a favor, cut yourself up a little space, a little piece of kingdom, and say that here, kubusa mina, here my presence is going to be manifest. And then when you're ready, bring in a woman into that picture, marry her, and then say, here I've established my family and my home, and then see what's gonna happen. Today I finally see what the journey was leading towards. And as you guys can hear, it's been a 3-year journey. Spirituality. Here and there, sure, I gave away some, but nothing like this recording. You know? And to those that like to play religious games, you know, this religion is better than that religion, that into that maybe you can engage someone on, if you don't have respect for their religion, is make sure that they're longing for a presence with God. The rest is up to God. Because for me, now had you come and stopped me at a deep search for my ancestors, my ancestral line, you know, you'd have missed the fact that, hey, there's nothing demonic about my culture, about the way we seek oneness with God. And the more I read the Bible, I can pull verses for you in Nehemiah. I can pull verses for you in the Bible where, again, it gets shown and it gets revealed. Now we're not dealing with spirituality. I mean, we're not dealing with the kingdom. With religion. We're dealing with spirituality. We're dealing with kingdomness. Where they make it clean and clear that God is a generational God. Whoever told you to forget about your ancestors, I can tell you now today, as God is my witness, as God will punish me if I'm wrong, they're evil. They are evil. Because in the same vein that you go back and you look for spiritual curses, God also has our generational curses. God has also placed generational blessings in your lineage. You guys will remember last year sometime I was uneasy, 2025 and 2024 parts of it. I said I'm gonna start this series on orphanages. The fact that we are intellectual orphans. We walk into rooms and we are the first ones. I'm the first black doctor, the first black chartered accountant, the first black person to do this in my family, in society. And I said that is wrong and it is a lie. Because even though the accountancy profession today may manifest itself in passing the board exams with SAICA, but accounting at its root is accounting for resources, the management of resources, and then accounting for them. You're not the first person on earth to do that. Joseph, in the Bible, what he did for the Egyptians, the 7 fat cows and the 7 small cows, and how prophetic it was for him, that it means that there's going to be a great famine, a great drought after the 7 years of success. So in the 7 years of success, and he was advising Pharaoh, hire someone that is educated, put away 20%. Those are financial principles that I'm teaching you guys today. I'm not the first. And if you do that, you cut yourself off from the spiritual generational message that God has sent your family. If you're a doctor, if you say you're the first doctor, how do you think they were healing diseases before you came around, Einstein? So in your family, they were dying of flu before you came. Childbirth, before you came, they didn't know how to give birth. There's no way, black kid, you are the first in your family. All that it is you've been cut off from your ancestry. And by ancestry, I mean you've been cut off from your history. You don't know your history. You don't know your family line. As a result, you think you're the first. You might be the first in its current expression, in its current format. Yeah, you're the first one to get an MBCHB. But you're not the first one to fight diabetes. You're not the first one to fight high blood pressure. You're not the first one to fight flu. You're not the first one to navigate a broken arm, a broken ankle. You're not the first one. You are not the first one. And now you learn today when Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6 says, I'm gonna send Elijah to you. And Elijah, what he's gonna do? And for 400 years, God was quiet. He said, I'm gonna return the heart of parents to their children, the heart of fathers to their children, and in return, I'm going to turn the hearts of children to their parents and children to their fathers. That is that generational message. That is that generational blessing that you don't hear when you get cut off your ancestors and you demonize them and you make them evil. And you have to justify whether you're worshiping them or not, or you're learning. Hey, young Nandaba, with the definitions. I'm here to tell you that the solution that we've been crying about, and when Jesus was asked how teach us to pray, the first thing that he said, you must say, is our Father. Our Father. Come on, man. You know? And so if you want to take anything from a finance perspective, I'm continuing it. Now when you see the intersection between finance, family, and spirituality, faith, finance, family, and faith, if you want to take something from today's teaching, is the fatherhood principle. Starting with myself, to say that if I had not longed for, if I had not looked for my forefathers, I would not be here in the current format. I would not be here knowledge-wise. I would not have gone on the last 3 years of Bible reading. I would not have gone through the last 3 years of Bible interpretation. I would have completely missed Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. And I'm saying that it's culminating today. In the 3 years, in the 5 years that I've been seeking oneness with God, a return to my ancestor and a return to who I am. You know, even when you say who I am, right? Why don't we say who am I? A return to who am I? It ends with I am. And when they ask God, who shall I say? When Moses was asking, who are you? Who should I say sent you? And then God said, the great I am. Sengifike emsebenzini. Ngizonixolela bakithi. Sanibonani.
Abuti.
Le kae brother?
Utlaloka brother.
Sharp brother.
Nate ke motjhao brother.
Ke motjhao? Rapela
brother.
brother.
Sama ka 5,000 brother.
Rapela brother.
Ke rapele.
Yeah.
O ja thapelo brother.
Oyeja. Ka o botsa. Rapela 5,000 o tlo e bona. O tlo nkhomba.
Okay.
Before kgwedi e fela. O tlo reng ke tlo ja thapelo o tlo eja brother. I kid you not. Like, guys, I've made a lot of money the last couple of years. I've lost a lot of money the last couple of years. I don't want to act like kitty woo-woo. Nah. This is me guiding you. Uguti, listen, go and know yourself. That's why they say go find out who you are. But when you speak of yourself, you say, I'm going to find out who I am. And then the expression of finding out who I am, here the lights don't want to switch on. In finding out who I am, essentially what you are doing is you are going to find God. You are going to find, you know, in the Bible says we're made in the image of God. You are going to connect the spirit side. You are going to go back. You are going to fall back into that oneness with God. You know, you are going to fall back into that presence with God. You are going to be in the great I am. You are going to, I want you to hear it. Né? And I will repeat it and I will make it redundant until maybe it clicks that particular way. When you go on a search of who you are, when I go and search who am I, or when I want to find out who I am, I will end up with the great I am. Those of you guys that are not even Christian and that share with us YouTube messages. I know Wayne Dwyer comes to mind. They say that thing that you put at the end of I am sick, I am hungry, I am poor. They say that that thing is you speaking negatively into your life. You are using your God power to then call poverty and sickness upon yourself instead of healing on yourself. You are misusing the principle of I am. And then they tell you that now start using I am positively. So if you feel sick, say I am on the route to healing, rather than saying I am sick. Instead of saying I am broke, say I am pre-rich. Say I'm on step 1 of wealth. Do you hear how many concepts came together in this recording? And I'm saying to you that I am begging you from today's recording, as a finance teaching, take spirituality. As a finance teaching, take Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. Turn your heart toward parenthood. Turn your heart towards fatherhood. As a finance teaching, there's a recording I did where I spoke about gents, forgive your father. You remember, guys, these things are coming back. 3 years. 3 years. Bachelor of is it sciences? Bachelor of faith. Yahlangana, gents, yahlangana. Mina, I'm saying to you that, listen, call it what you want. Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. Start with, let me return to my parents, let me return to fatherhood. See where that journey takes you. It's gonna take you back to the great I am. It's gonna take you to the presence of God. And once you are in the presence of God, I can tell you now, the finance that we're busy talking about now, you know, money is so low. Money is the way it's nothing. First of all, it's man-made. This is somebody else's teaching. This is Dr. Francis Miles' teaching. He's the one that I was reading on tithe and why we tithe. And he says, you know, in Matthew 6, I think it's verse somewhere there, verse 6 or 10 or whatever. Guys, I just know the verse, the words. He says, you know, Jesus was speaking to them, and he says, if you can't be trusted with unrighteous mammon, if you can't be trusted with small money, he calls it unrighteous mammon. Unrighteous because it's not from God. It's man-made. If you can't be trusted with small things that man-made, how else can you be trusted with the riches of heaven? And then he's saying that essentially go and learn how to manage small man-made money. And then I will then give you the riches of heaven. I will then come and I'll manifest spiritual blessings, things that you will never be able to control. What is time to God, man? Come on. As I say, in any religion, man, what is time to God? Today's reading, go and turn your heart to parenthood. Go and turn your heart to fatherhood. Go back. Feel guilty doing it. But find out, Gogo, who was your grandfather? Mama, who was your father? If they're late, let them tell you. Let them talk. Let them talk. Let them talk. Put your heart in the right place. That is why it becomes difficult for some people to pray the prayer, Our Father, because they don't have a connection with the term Father. We don't have a connection with Father as a society. When we say we are dying from fatherlessness, we say it casually. We are saying it as if, you know, we are talking about sex. We are talking about a breakup. We're talking about umjolo, you know. And I'm saying to you that today fatherhood takes on a whole new meaning. I'm gonna close with something that Dr. Miles Monroe says. He says that, you know, to be a dad is your calling, man. I went through it where I wanted to get a vasectomy, and I remember reading it, and Pastor Miles was saying that, you know, your ultimate completion as a man is to be a father. You got on your way to being a father, you're gonna be a husband, but it's to be a father, you know. And when I was trying to debate it, and he said, here's what makes it your ultimate calling. And he says, imagine that God loved or saw man so much that it's the one title where he gives you the opportunity to share a title with him, to be called Father. And based on how you do it, he says that I am willing to risk my reputation on you. That is how high of a calling. When he says I made man in my image, that is how much in his image he has made you. That he said, I will even lend you my title. I will bear. There are people today who, when they have to call God Father and they think of who their father is and what their father has done to them, they say there's no way that God can be Father. The definition of father in my life cannot be it. That is how much you are called to be a father, that God says, I will share in the ruining of my name. This, like the day somebody calls you my father, they will know me, they will know God, based on how well you have done the work of going to know who I am. I'm gonna end it on that note, guys. Today's YouTube video, actually, guys, you saw none. Dropped off my wife at work, and after that I just knew immediately that today we're gonna talk about fatherhood, today we're gonna talk about parenting, today we're gonna talk about, and I didn't know that it was going to be the one video where I finally bring you guys in to let you know that, guys, I've incorporated spirituality completely. And by that I mean that a lot of the turn that has been taken in the last 3 years is that instead of saying I'm happy to announce I've got a master's in finance, I'm happy to announce that I've got a oneness with God with finance. I've got a oneness with God in finance. What's my financial qualification? Oneness with God. Yeah, Kishapa spiritual finance. Kishapa finance, mchan. Hey, guy, retint. You know, when you see Jabupule was saying to Tsovilagazi, Gutamina talent-wise, I get Kongang match like South Africa. Angazi if khona match nge finance or what, but ngiyakutshela ukuthi nami maye ungayibizi Soweto Derby ye finance ngikhona lapho ngiyayizwa lento ihamba egazini, because I found my oneness with God when it comes to finance, which is a misnomer. I found my oneness with God, but as a finance teacher, I'm telling you guys that isn't this those guys. You heard the gentleman at the gate, Buzilo ukuthi Kao. I asked him how are you, he said in grand. Mara ngishota njengemali. Ngathi thandaza. Athi ngishota njenge 5,000, mawungamplasa nge 5,000. Ngathi thandaza boy. Athi ngizodla umthandazo ngathi uzowudla. I hope one day, I can't wait, not even I hope, I can't wait to do the video where I tell you guys ukuthi that guy ngihlangane naye wathi mfethu 5,000 ngwele. Uthe ngithandaza ngathandaza 5,000 yangishaya. Bafethu, I don't want to say this year because it's not a yearly message. This era guys, we are gonna do abundantly, guys. So share my exponentials. These things that we talk about or decolonize, dinging, we're gonna, guys, this year I'm telling you now, this era, not just this year. God is not bound by years, he's not bound. The time he stands outside of it and young beg anje. Join guys. Join in. Shy finance. Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. Inhliziyo ayibheke ebazalini, ayibheke abokubo baba. If you still have to forgive your father, if you still have to look for your father, I mean, I'll always tell you, especially my daughter, please go on that journey. Please go on that journey. There's ngiyacela, go on that journey. it's worth it. Ngiyanicela bafethu. Ifa lakho lilapho. Your wealth is there. And I don't even want to just limit it to wealth, guys. Yonke into yakho ilapho, gents. Alles is there. Go on that journey. As I say, mina qala, like I did, mina qala where you can. Know your father, know your grandfather. Leave it there. If you're lucky enough and your grandfather is alive, ask him about his dad. Ask him about his granddad. You've covered 5 generations. That's close to 250 years. Watch the blessings that God has for you. Watch what God has been busy with. Watch what God put in your great-great-great-great-grandfather's heart, that he started, that he worked on, that he pushed on, that he pushed on. And now after 200 years, 300 years of compounding, kuzofika wena uzoyiqedelela. Kuzofika wena uzogcwalisela ingane zakho ukuthi nazo when they take one after you to la ekhaya, umkhulu ukhokho waqala lokho, so wayifikisa la. Ubaba wayithatha wayithi mina ngiyayithatha ngiyithi. Sikhulume nge-generational wealth. Sikhulume nge-generational wealth. Ngiyabonga guys, thi ngingena emsebenzini itoho lingimele. Sharp sharp. Maybe fittingly kodwa ngizothandaza, because ukuthandaza, it's not a performance for you guys. When I knock off here, I'm gonna pray. If you can, just pray yourself on your side. And then I got a trust fund. It's a spiritual trust fund. Go and open it, go and log it. Mara rapele and then stoch. Sharp afetu.